Okay, we're going to get things started. I want to again apologize for a couple things. First thing is we have our speaker. He's going to be getting things put together. It's going to take a few moments, but I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. They are here today. We are going to continue with the program. My name is Dr. Whiteman. I'm the principal here at Dowagiac Middle School. Most of you obviously know that. I want to also thank our ETS department who actually came here and helped make this event possible for us tonight and bringing our guest speaker, and we'll introduce him in a minute here. ETS is a program that is being put on through Southwest Michigan. They actually help pay for our evening about informational evening about vaping awareness. But I also have a few things to share about our presenter. His name is Michael De Leon. He is an expert in vaping and also drugs and alcohol and nicotine abuse. And he's going to share some insight about his experiences with that in his own personal life and also his research that he has conducted. And in addition to that, he's a native of Ireland. His family actually came over from Ireland and settled down in Philadelphia in the Pennsylvania area, and he's since moved with his wife down to Nashville, Tennessee, which is an area that she's also familiar with and has lived most of her life. But here I'm going to be introducing Michael De Leon. He's going to be our guest speaker for this evening.
Okay, how's everybody doing? I appreciate you coming. Sometimes I travel the whole country. I've been to all 50 states. And when I do this, I offer the staff, which I got a chance to meet with the staff after school. And then I also offer parent night like this. And so I want to educate everyone. If we just educate the kids about drugs, we're not completing the education. We've got to educate our parents, our grandparents. We really do. Everyone has to be on the same page. And I, told the principal, it's everywhere I go. I've had 800 parents. I've had one parent. And I always say it's about it's about quality, not quantity. So I'm glad you're here. Should this place be packed? Absolutely. This school did everything in their power to get parents to be aware of tonight. It's on the marquee. They emailed. It's on the Facebook page. It's been in the newspaper. I mean, what else could you do? What else can a school district do? So I appreciate you being here. If there was one parent, I would do the same thing. It's important. I don't think there's anything more important in our country right now than our children. And I don't think there's anything threatening our kids more than this. Michigan legalized marijuana with a complete indifference to the children. Every state that's legalized marijuana, same thing, complete indifference to our children. We're not focusing on the threats and the increases and the perception of harm problems that our kids are looking at. And vaping, I'm going to explain to you about vaping, but it's not just about vaping and nicotine. A lot of the kids today in the assemblies, in the or the hour or so we spent in the lunchrooms with the 7th and the 8th graders, got a lot of questions asked to me. And I told staff today that in a state like Michigan, Illinois is the same thing, that has recently legalized marijuana and had so many people pro. Sorry. Something is in my throat. That's embarrassing. I don't know what that was. That hurt. In the states that has legalized marijuana, and I found this in Colorado, I found this in Alaska, I found this in Washington. In Nevada, in California, in Massachusetts, And now I'm seeing it in Michigan, and I'm seeing it in Illinois. When you legalize marijuana and you have so many people that are pro-marijuana and they're going out there trying to convince people that marijuana is no big deal, that it's no more dangerous than alcohol. You send a message to kids that applies to them too. I don't ever hear a kid say, well, marijuana is legal now for 21 years of age and older. They say marijuana is legal. And we're promoting it and trying to push it. The kids don't believe it's harmful for them either. And your youth use of marijuana is skyrocketing in Michigan. And I can tell you it's very prevalent in this school district. I had a chance to go to the alternative school between the staff workshop that I had, or between the student workshops that I had and the staff workshop. And I went over to your alternative school. And I had a chance to talk a little bit more in depth with those kids, in a smaller, more intimate 1-hour session. We got a lot of good information and what their perception is. And the problem is, now the vaping devices, the electronic devices, are not only going to be used for nicotine, they're going to be used for every drug on earth. Every illicit drug that's used is going to be into an electronic device. The vapes are going to become drug delivery systems for all drugs. So I like to use this analogy about a check engine light. Have you ever had a check engine light come on in your car after you get that heart attack, okay? It could be that the gas tank is loose. Or it could be that you have a $5,000 repair, okay, coming. And you're like, check engine light. Well, the check engine lights are going off on our kids. And we're not taking it as seriously as we do on our cars. And what we're doing right now is we're priming these kids, we're priming the next generation of addicts. That's exactly what we're doing. Based on my 25 years of experience, if you don't know this, I spent 12 years in prison. From 1995 to 2007, I was in prison. I became a heroin addict, meth addict. I was a garbage pail addict. I always use the term garbage pail addict because I did every drug you can imagine. And my parents, they didn't raise a drug addict. My teachers, my administrators, my coaches, no one raised me up to become a criminal and end up in prison. But that's exactly what happened based on the choices and the decisions that I made. And I don't want to take the time to go over my entire story for 45 minutes because I want to give you some information and some resources that you came for. But the trauma that I experienced as a kid, from sexual abuse to physical abuse, the pushing people away, counselors, coaches, teachers, not talking to anyone, bringing it all in, getting very introverted, and not dealing with my problem. What that did was it put me in a position where a friend of mine offered me cigarettes, nicotine, because I was so stressed out. And instead of saying no, I said yes. That turned to alcohol, that turned to marijuana, that turned to prescription drugs, meth, heroin, and I ended up a full-blown drug addict, and I ended up in prison. And I spent 12 years in prison. So many years of addiction, 12 years of prison. When I walked out in 2007, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I started speaking in schools 12 years ago. So I've now been home 12 years. I've been home as much time as I was in prison. And in the last 12 years, I have seen everything change. I have seen everything get worse. And I truly, truly believe we are setting this next generation up for a public social health crisis that the country is not ready for. We are now in the worst public social health crisis our country's ever seen. More people are overdosing on drugs than ever in our country's history. In fact, life expectancy has decreased 4 years in a row. That's never happened in American history. It's happened 3 years in a row, 2015, 16, and 17. It hadn't happened since 1916, the great influenza, where 1/5 of the world's population died in 1 year from the influenza. And we had a 3-year life expectancy of decreasing. It didn't happen again for 100 years, and it happened in 2015, 16, and 17. Well, 2018 became the 4th year in a row. That's never happened in our country's history. So besides the things that are going on with opioids, we've had 7 billion opioids prescribed in the last 7 years. Billion, not million. Billion. Benzos and stimulants are at a faster increase. So everything that happened in our country, and if you watch the news, if you read the newspaper, or you live in Michigan, you understand we've had a heroin and opioid crisis in this country. Well, the exact same thing is happening with benzodiazepines and people like Xanax, Valium, Klonopin, Ativan. People aren't paying attention to what's coming. We didn't learn our lesson with those other medications. Now we're not learning the lesson with the new medications. And then everything we had happen with heroin is happening all over again with methamphetamine. And Michigan is going to really, really see the brunt. This whole region of the country is going to see the brunt of methamphetamine, and America's not ready, and America's not prepared. So every sector of our community needs to come and raise children. Every sector of our community, our faith-based community, our business community, our schools, our law enforcement, okay, parents. Every sector of the community needs to come together, but every sector of the community is not. We are very siloed in this approach, and kids are going to be the ones that suffer the most because the accessibility is increasing. When you make it more accessible, people say kids were getting marijuana before it was legalized. So if we legalize it, we'll put it in a store so they can't get their hands on it unless they're 21. And when people tell me that, I said, how does that work with alcohol? It doesn't work. How does it work with vaping? It doesn't work. And when you make it more accessible, you increase youth use. When you make it perception of harm, when you decrease perception of harm, when you tell kids that it's not a big deal, their use goes up as well. So you've brought a perception of harm into this state that marijuana is no big deal. The federal government has failed us completely when it comes to the regulation of nicotine products, and they've allowed the electronic nicotine delivery system, the vape, to explode with zero control and zero regulation, and now that device is going to become the delivery system for all drugs. So, I wanted to not just tell you about some things with vaping, give you some statistics and such. I wanted to give you some actual tools that you can use, some resources that you can take home with you and that you can absolutely start to utilize that will enhance protective factors for your family, for your children. And one of those tools and resources is a curriculum. This is on my website, and I have business cards, I have brochures, I have some things I want to give you, but that's my website right there, steeredstraight.org. And on this website is a curriculum for success. If you've ever heard of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, then his son took that book and adapted it to 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens, right? It's very similar to that. It's 8 chapters long. From the little things that matter, from helping them develop a better attitude and character to making their dreams come true. It doesn't matter if your child, your grandson, your granddaughter is going to be in entertainment, in sports, a teacher, a welder. They'll be more successful in life with this curriculum. It's 8 chapters. It's 176 pages. It's free. I'm not selling it. I'm giving it away. And there's a facilitator's guide with it for parents, for grandparents, because you're the facilitator. And you help your children through this curriculum. The kids love homework, right? Kids love homework, right? This isn't homework. This is life work. It's so amazing, and it's so fun. And once they get into it, it's incredible. It's very, very engaging. So I wanted to give you that as a tool. You download it right off our website, steeredstraight.org. It's for you. It's just download it. It doesn't take up much space. You could print it out and you could work on it, or you could do it right from the internet, right from the PDF file that you download. But this is 8 chapters. It's an incredible resource, and I wanted to give it to you. I have a book that comes out next month. It's going to be on our website as well. My whole story, everything. My story is one of the worst stories you're ever going to hear and see in your life. It's really, really incredible. But my book will be on our website next month. That 6x9 prison cell, that specific one right there, I spent 4 years in. The last 4 years, that was the actual cell I was in. But I spent 12 years in a 6x9 prison cell. And that wasn't what my mother raised me to become. I have zero excuses. I mean, you could look back at contributing factors. You could look back at causal factors, divorced parents, sexual abuse, physical abuse, trauma. It's all there. Getting involved in nicotine at the age of 11, alcohol at the age of 11, marijuana at the age of 12, pills that weren't prescribed for me at the age of 15. It's all there. It's just, when I go out now and I talk to people and I interview people, I also go to jails and prisons all over the country. I'll be in 2 prisons tomorrow, I'll be in 2 prisons the next day. When I go to schools, wherever I go, I also go to the jails and the prisons for a lot of reasons. I mean, I spent 12 years trying to get out of prison, now I spend every day trying to get back in. It might make no sense to you whatsoever, right? Christmas Eve, I'll be in 2 prisons. Christmas Day, I'll be in a prison. Christmas afternoon, I'll be in a jail. Christmas evening, I'll be in another jail. And you think I'm crazy, my wife will be with me the entire time. All day, she goes with me, right? I've been married to my wife for 27 years, 27 years. And 12 of those 27 years, her marriage was sitting in a folding chair in a prison visit hall for an hour every Sunday. That was her marriage for 12 years. 5 years, I came home, I went right back within that year and spent 7 more. So for 12 years, my wife visited me in a prison, and now she goes into prisons with me, right? Because 90% of every woman in prison and 80% of every man in prison is a parent. So who's really affected by their incarceration? Again, when I say that, if you really think about it, you think about all the times you've ever heard about prisons and crime and criminals and people going to prison, how many times do we really talk about the effects of incarceration on children and the incarcerated? See, who's really affected by that incarceration? It's the kids. You want to put people away? Okay, some people have to go away forever. Some people need to stay there for the rest of their life. I hate it, but it's true. Some people will never change. They will never change, and they're going to get out and they're going to hurt people. They're going to do the same thing that they did to put them in the prison in the first place. So some people have to go and stay. But about 2/3 of people should never go to prison, or either went to prison for a reason and now they can turn their life around. So I want to go back in and I want to help those men and women change the way they think, change the way they feel, address their issues so they can come home and be the parents that they're supposed to be, the taxpayers that they're supposed to be. Contribute to society, not take from society. So that's why I go in there, but I can tell you that the door revolves like this. And 90% of everyone who's in prison, 90% is in there because of drugs. And 90% of everyone in prison, 3 drugs before the age of 18, alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. The same 3 drugs I started with. So I lost my freedom, right? And I don't want your kids to lose theirs. I don't want your kids to lose their freedom for 12 minutes, forget 12 years. I don't want your kids to grow up to be me. It's literally my life goal to get your kids to grow up to be who you're raising them to become, who God destined them to become. I don't want them to get off track. And getting off track in so many ways doesn't start with heroin and meth, doesn't start with robbing a bank, it doesn't start with crime. It starts 10 to 17, and it begins with the experimentation of 3 substances, nicotine, alcohol, and marijuana. And America is the least concerned about those 3 substances. Because if you think about it, if the principal called you and said your son, your daughter, your grandchild got caught in school today with a water bottle, but it didn't have water, it had vodka in it, or they got caught with marijuana in school, or they got caught with cigarettes or a vape pen in school, you would be concerned. You would definitely be concerned. But if the principal called you and said your son, your daughter, your grandchild got caught with a heroin needle, a tourniquet, and 5 bags of heroin, I think the concern would be higher, much higher. It would be higher. So I'm trying to raise people's concerns about things that people aren't concerned about. Because I've never known anybody, and I've known a lot of heroin addicts. I really have, unfortunately. I mean, I've known a lot of meth addicts. I've been to 220 funerals. 220 addiction funerals. I'm not a pastor, right? If I listened to my mother when I was a kid, that's what I would have been. I should have been a pastor, but I didn't listen to my mother because she didn't know anything. And then I grew up and found out my mother knew everything. I should have shut up and listened to my mother, and I would have had a different life. Here's the thing. We're not concerned about the things that begin the problem. We're concerned about the problem. Oh my gosh, heroin overdoses in America, such a tragedy. I'm with you. Oh my God, methamphetamine is terrible. This is getting out of control. I'm there. But we're not have the same concern about where it all begins. And I can't stop this problem where it ends. We can only stop this problem where it begins if we get it to not start in the first place. So, we have to talk about what's going on and we're not. We need to talk more. So the talk, when I was a kid, there was two talks. There was the birds and the bees talk and the drug talk. They both lasted about 5 minutes. After my dad was done with both of those talks, then mom filled in all the missing information, because that's what moms do, right? But no longer is there a drug talk. It's an ongoing conversation, and it's not even about drugs. It's about all the things that relate to drugs in addition to drugs. So we've got to talk about what's going on, and we're not talking enough about it. We have to talk more and more and more and more. So teens whose families eat dinner with their kids at least 5 nights a week, the kids are less likely to use drugs and underage drink. That's the gold standard. 5 nights a week, that's the gold standard. So teenagers who infrequently eat dinner with their families, the kids are much more likely to underage drink and use drugs. Why is that? Because kids need to hear the truth about drugs from family, guardians, parents, grandparents. The truth needs to come from family, not the internet, not their friends, okay, from you. So I came up with this great idea. I called it Drugs Over Dinner. Have you talked to your kids about drugs over dinner, right? And the idea behind it was I made these fluorescent green stickers, and I went to every pizzeria and Chinese delivery place and Applebee's Curbside to Go and Buffalo Wild Wings and anybody that was picking up or delivering food. I went to these people and I said, could you put this sticker on your bag or your box so when the parents get home, they look at it, talk to your kids about drugs over dinner. What's this all about? And so it was working fantastic. It was thousands and thousands of stickers out there. Our website crashed 2 times, so I knew it was really working, right? And so I did this big billboard campaign all over 17 states. We had billboards in 17 states. I translated it into Spanish. It was going fantastic. All I wanted to try to do was drive parents to our website so they could get information and talk to their kids about drugs. Well, I'm telling you, you have to eat dinner with your kids 5 nights a week, and I personally don't believe that you even can. I'm asking parents all across America to do what I don't think is possible. I mean, some parents can eat dinner with their kids 5 nights a week. Some grandparents can. That's great. If you can, more power to you. But for the most part, most of America, 2 jobs, football, cheerleading, traffic, it's hard to eat dinner with your kids 5 nights a week. So through a lot of conversations between me and my wife really came up with the name. She said, do you want parents to eat dinner with your kids 5 nights a week or have 5 conversations? And I said, I want both. She said, if it's only one, which is it? I said, conversations. She said, call it table talks. Don't tell them dinner. Maybe it's a breakfast, maybe it's a lunch, maybe it's 2 dinners, and then maybe one of those table talks is at the picnic table on a Sunday. Take one of the table talks and turn it into a dashboard conversation and tell parents to have conversations in the car. Don't require them to have 5 dinners, have 5 conversations. And I said, that's why I married you. You're the smartest woman I ever met in my life. And we came up with table talks, right? So every prevention organization in the country advocates for the family dinner time. I'm advocating for the family conversation time. But if I got up here and talked to you all about jewels, some of you would know what a jewel is, right? You know what a jewel is? You know what a jewel is? You don't? Excellent. You don't know what a jewel is. So if I got up here and I started talking about jewels and sorens and flares and vibes and views and triple C and robo-tripping and shatter and wax and dab and rock and moon rocks and flocka, triple C, would you know what I was talking about? You're like, some of it you might know, but maybe not all of it, right? So I came up with all the conversations for you. If I want you to have 5 conversations, I don't expect you to figure out what to talk about. So I got all of them for you. We did them all. 364 conversations. 104 family field trips is just cool stuff to do on Saturday and Sunday that I weave the conversation into. And the 260 conversations, 5 a week for 52 weeks of the year, there's your conversations. Are you going to do 364? Probably not, but you have 364 to choose from. And then we turned it into a book. I don't know if you remember books. They had hardcovers and pages in the middle. They were before apps came along, right? I want everybody to put their phones away and take a book out, and we go over the conversation. And if you could do that 5 nights a week, 5 times a week, you will absolutely impact in a positive way the education, and you will challenge the social norms. Because why would kids get involved in this stuff, right? I don't know if you remember last year, we were watching the news, and I said to my wife, hold on. Did that guy just said kids were eating Tide Pods? Is that what the newscaster just said? Kids are putting detergent Tide Pods in their mouth and they're eating it on purpose? Like, is that what he just said? Kids started doing it more and more and more. One kid did it, made a video about it. 20 other kids went to the hospital. Kids started following. The social norm was like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. That's how this vaping thing has gotten out of control. I believe that between the 6th grade is not as prevalent, but I might be wrong. But the 7th and 8th grade in this building, I'm telling you, more than half of them have vaped. Probably 70%. And I'm telling you about 50% are vaping on a regular basis. Now, I just finished 15 states of questionnaires. We did over 40,000 surveys. 70% of high school kids and 54% of middle school kids across the country in 15 states self-report that they're vaping on a regular basis. And before my presentation, that they indicate that it's not as big a deal as they do after the presentation. We've had staff members get confronted approached today by a lot of students. And a lot of the students was saying that was very eye-opening. So many of the students came into me in the lunchroom and said, you opened my eyes, you changed my perception of this, you taught me some things I didn't know. And so that's what I want to do. I want kids to be more informed, just like I want you to be more informed. So that's why I'm sharing this with you. Now, table talks, I have a little form right here, a little card. You can go on Amazon and you can buy this book. It's $13. We get $3 of it. Or you could go to our website, and I'll give you my card if you're interested. You could go to our website and buy it for $10, right? Or you can call our office and say, could you just send it to me? I don't even have $10. Fine, we send it out, right? I don't care about the money. I'm just trying to get this information to parents. But every month, you can download that month's conversations. You don't need the whole thing, but this month's theme, December, is connection and self-worth. So sometimes it's not all about drugs, right? But if you want to talk about vaping this month, you'd have to have that month downloaded. So it's better to get the book, obviously. But you don't have to. You can download these conversations from our website, Table Talks. It's right on our website. And I urge you and encourage you to do that. Now, there's something I want to tell you about drug testing. This right here is a surface test, okay? This is so critically important. There's 5 different drugs that can be tested by 5 different tests. We didn't develop them. We worked with a company that had developed them. I wanted parents to drug test their kids. I think if you drug test your kids randomly, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, 3 times a year, all 3 years, you'll eliminate drug experimentation in high school by 50%. Because kids will be deterred in middle school, and if they are getting drug tested, and all the kids are getting drug tested, they won't use experimentally in middle school because everyone knows they're getting drug tested. It's a deterrent, right? But if you don't want to drug test your kids, you should at least drug test the area in their room or on their tablet or on their laptop or their phone or in their steering wheel if they're driving to find out if marijuana or other drugs has been in the presence of that surface. And it's only going to test it over maybe 7 to 10 days. It doesn't linger forever. But this is a way for you to test your child's area in their room. This is a swab, and you take the swab out, and you can swab the phone, you can swab the tablet, you can swab the desk, and then you swab the panel. And if the panel turns red, you have THC present in that area. Now, they're going to tell you that their friend was over and their friend vaped THC, and that's what it was all about. It wasn't them, but that's a different issue. This is just going to tell you whether THC's been present in that area. There's a test for cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, and fentanyl. As an adolescent, it's very, very rare that you need that. But marijuana is a different story. And next month, we'll be producing our nicotine tests. so you could find out if they vaped in the room. Now these tests are, the people who manufactured it that we worked with, they sell them for $10 a piece. We sell 4 of them for $10 a piece, all right, for $2.50 a piece. I have some with me, or you could just order them on our website. This is an incredible way for you to test areas. And this is an oral test for nicotine. These are $5, right? This is a drug test for nicotine in the mouth. This same exact test from the same exact company is $35 on Amazon. How are we selling it for $5? Because we get it for $3. So does Amazon. They probably get it for $1. But anyway, we're selling these for $5 on our website because if you want to find out if your child has been vaping, I can tell you if nicotine has been in their mouth in the last 24 hours. You don't want to announce that you're going to do the test like on a Saturday morning because all the mouthwash in your entire house will be drank and gone and gargled with all Saturday morning, and they will mess the tests up. You have to catch them off guard. And all it is an oral swab, swab the mouth, put it in the thing, click it, sit it on the dining room table, and in 5 minutes I can tell you if nicotine's been in their mouth. Coditine, which is the metabolized version of nicotine, if they've smoked cigarettes or used a vape. We have other tests for other drugs, but I'm just kind of focused on 2 drugs, nicotine and marijuana. So I just wanted to tell you about that because if you have more questions afterwards, I'll be glad to answer your questions. So I made a documentary movie, and it's called Kids Are Dying. Horrible title. But I wanted to document what was taking place in New Jersey, Philadelphia with heroin, and so I made a documentary movie. And it's kind of hard to see with these lights. Maybe they could get turned off. The one set of lights could get turned off. That would even be good if I could get the screen a little bit less lit up. But these 4 kids were my first day. I went to interview 4 kids that were addicted to heroin and that were walking the streets of Camden, New Jersey. And that girl up there was my first girl that I met. And I said, I'm taking this into school to show kids about drugs. And she pulled up her arm sleeves and she said, here, go show kids this. I don't know how old she looks to you in this picture, but she's 21. And she died 9 months later of a heroin overdose. And 3 years earlier, she walked across her high school graduation stage to accept salutatorian of her graduating class. And she had a full scholarship to Temple University, and she fell off a pyramid at a football game and she fractured her tailbone. And the doctor put her on unlimited pain medication. And unlimited pain medication turned into heroin. Not everybody who gets prescribed pain medication turns into a heroin addict, and certainly not every heroin addict begins with pain medication. But what I found out, it's more than 3 out of 4. I interviewed 137 heroin addicts over 10 months, 137 of them. And 121 of them were addicted to opioid medications first, 88%. Most people who find themselves on heroin, before they find themselves on heroin, they're addicted to opioid medications first. It's 3 out of 4. I found out it was 88% in the 137 kids that I interviewed. But 137 out of 137 had 3 things in common, every single one of them. They drank alcohol underage, they smoked marijuana 18 years of age and younger, and they smoked cigarettes or chewed tobacco as a kid. 10 to 17, those 3 drugs were consumed by every single one that I interviewed. Now, in the 10,000 interviews that I've done of addicts and prisoners, 10,000, 90% began with the same 3 drugs, 17 years of age and younger. And it goes back to what I started saying before I had my coughing attack. I apologize for that. But what we're least sensitized about, what we're least concerned about in America, are the 3 drugs that's kicking off addiction for 90% of everyone in our country: alcohol, nicotine, and marijuana. So I did a second movie. These are all on our website, and all on YouTube, called An American Epidemic. And I went to 30 states, and I interviewed 500 parents who lost their kids to an overdose of drugs. I came to Michigan. I think there's 11 people in the movie in Michigan. It was a horrible month that I interviewed people in Michigan. It was so difficult. But I did a movie, and I interviewed 500 parents who lost their kids to an overdose of drugs. And I asked all 500 parents, 17 years of age and younger, did your son or daughter drink alcohol? Yes. Smoke weed? Yes. Smoke, vape, or chew? 100%. 500 out of 500 I couldn't believe it. And so it really changed the direction of my life. Now, I made a movie called Marijuana Legalization, called Marijuana X, about marijuana legalization. This is on YouTube. You should really watch it. It's 54 minutes. It will tell you a little bit more clearly what's getting ready to come to you in Michigan. This was in the 3rd year of legalization in Denver, Colorado, and the whole state. I did some filming in Washington, some in Alaska, but pretty much 90% of it was all filmed in Colorado. And when I was filming this movie, okay, I came across these little things right here. Those little vape vials right there. And the sign next to the vape vial said liquid weed. And I asked the kid behind the counter what liquid weed was, and he told me you could vape weed. And I said, what do you mean vape weed? And that kid right there, that 23-year-old kid, Sean, my cameraman, vaped it, right? And he had a massive stroke. He had irreversible brain damage. He'd stopped breathing on the way to the hospital. We had to call paramedics. And that kid, 4.5 to 5 years later, has not spoken a word in 4.5 years. He had irreversible brain damage. He can't feed himself, bathe himself, or clothe himself. His 67-year-old mother has been taking care of him ever since this happened. She flew in from California to take him home. That kid, his entire life was changed. Now, we bought these vials in a store. We didn't get them on the street from a drug dealer. We bought them in a store. This was legal, right? So I took the vials to the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and they tested them. And I got 2 reports from the DEA. The first report told me that there was 16 chemicals in the e-juice. 16 chemicals in the e-juice. And the THC report, THC is a molecule in marijuana that's psychoactive, that gets you high. It's the one and only molecule in the cannabis plant that gets you high. The THC level was 87%. 87%. That's never been tested in the human brain. I'm gonna actually go back and show you a chart. This is THC. This is one molecule, one psychoactive ingredient in the cannabis plant in marijuana that gets you high. It's really the only molecule that anybody ever cares about, right? You might have heard of CBD, cannabidiol. That's medical, right? Properties, and it was discovered in 1985. We discovered the second one in 2009. We discovered the third one in 2011. Now there's 6 more. That's medical marijuana. That's something that should be harnessed. That's something that we should work with. But see, that's not what anybody cares about in the industry. They just care about marijuana that gets you high. So in 1960, the DEA started testing that level. It was 1%. By 2011, it had gotten to 12%. That's 51 years of farmers and botanists increasing the potency of the marijuana to 11%, 12% in 2011. So they legalized marijuana in Colorado in 2013, and in 2 years, it went from 12% to 37%. That's not farmers, that's chemists and scientists and a little company called Monsanto. Don't know if that rings a bell, Monsanto, but Monsanto owns the marijuana industry. They will own it completely in 5 years. This is farmers and botanists increasing the potency of the marijuana cannabis plant. That's scientists and chemists doing it, genetically modifying it. And that's where we are today. Far above that. I told you that was 87% in that liquid. Now we're at 100, pure marijuana, and I'll show you. I don't really talk to the kids about drugs. I want to talk to them about drugs' effect on the brain. And the 3 drugs I'm most concerned about are those 3. Alcohol is a depressant, and nicotine is a stimulant, and THC is a hallucinogen. So kids are stimulating, hallucinating, and depressing the brain while it's developing, right? So if somebody's in their 40s, 30s, late 20s, okay, and they want to smoke marijuana, I don't really have an opinion. I think it's stupid. I don't want anybody in their car and endangering everybody else. But if you want to sit in your house and you want to smoke marijuana and you want to get high, I don't have an opinion. I don't tell adults how to be adults. If an adult has a problem, if somebody calls me up at 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday and says, I need help, we'll help them. My wife and I helped 4 people today while I was doing this, texting back and forth. I know this phone has just gone off 4 times since I've been talking. Something's up. My wife hopefully is handling it. If an adult has a problem, man, I'm there for you. I am. But I don't tell adults how to be adults. All I care about is kids. And I don't want them to get started. And if they turn 21 and they want to drink, the law says they're allowed to, right? They can drink. Should be 28. The brain doesn't fully develop until you're in your late 20s. My wife says for men it's 55, so I'll be there soon. But I don't want the kids to do it while their brain is developing. If an adult wants to do it and they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, I don't have an opinion. I just care about kids. And I also tell kids, your brain's not going to develop until you're probably 30. The legal drinking age and the legal marijuana age should really be 30 years of age if you really think about it, if we really care about the development of the brain. Now, there's a lot of hard-headed people out here that don't believe a lot of what I say. Marijuana is no big deal. Marijuana cures cancer. Marijuana is the answer to all our problems. Marijuana will put Big Pharma out of business. No, Big Pharma is in the marijuana business, and I'll share that with you right now. This is a problem that's going to get worse, and the electronic nicotine delivery system, the vaping device, is what's going to drive this whole thing. Now, nicotine, tobacco, cigarette-related illness is the #1 cause of death in America, #1 cause of death in the world, right? And so in 1994, Congress held some hearings in Washington, and they brought the top 7 CEOs from the top 7 tobacco companies to Washington to have a little hearing, right? And Congressman Wyden from Oregon, he asked them all a question. Here's the top 7 CEOs from the top 7 tobacco companies, and this is the question that they were asked. Watch this. Uh-oh. Volume not working? Let me try this. Make sure.
Yes or no? Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
Mr. Johnston.
Congressman, cigarettes and nicotine clearly do not meet the classic definitions of addiction.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
I believe that nicotine is not addictive.
And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
So, I say to the kids, were they lying? And the kids all go, yeah. Were they lying? Of course they were. I say to the kids, do you remember them? And they go, no. I said, you know why? You weren't here in 1994. Of course you don't remember them. You weren't here. We remember them. We watched it live. When those men got up on C-SPAN and lied to Congress and lied to the American public, we're all looking at them like, these guys are lying. We knew they were lying. Those same people, 3 of those same 7 are still around today, still in the tobacco industry. But those same companies and those same industries are lying to our children. And they flavored it. And no one's paying attention. So, the largest vaping company in the world is called R.J. Reynolds. The second largest vaping company in the world is called Altria. They own Juul, J-U-U-L, the largest market share company, about 80% of it still, because they own 60 other companies, and they own the one brand of nicotine that's used in 80% of the devices called nicotine salts, and I'll explain that. So this is the largest vapor company in the world, and that's the second largest vapor company in the world. And R.J. Reynolds is part of the largest tobacco conglomerate in the world, and Altria is part of the 3rd largest tobacco conglomerate in the world. If these devices were invented to help people quit smoking, then why would the tobacco industry have invented them? That doesn't make much sense, right? So you invent the product to get your customers off of your product. I don't think Shark Tank would invest in that, right? They wouldn't be around much longer. So I don't care what device we're talking about or whether the person uses pods, P-O-D-S, which is a wax device that goes into the device, or liquid or juice, right? Whether they make their own juice or buy juice, it doesn't matter what device we're talking about. Every single device has 3 components, 100%. There's a power source, a battery. There's a reservoir at the bottom where the liquid goes, a canister or a wax pod will take that place. But the atomizer is the key. And the atomizer, what that little thing does is it takes the liquid or takes the wax and it heats it up to between 200 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit so it can aerosol into your lungs. When it aerosols into your lungs, it's no longer the propylene glycol or the vegetable glycerine or the vitamin E acetate or the diacetyl, the chemicals, the flavors. It's no longer that. It changes into a different chemical compound, a volatile organic compound, and it becomes a toxin, and it enters the brain. The nicotine enters the brain, the THC enters the brain, but everything else enters the respiratory system between 200 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So the tobacco industry knew exactly what they were doing. They told America that this was invented to help people quit smoking. Here's the problem. If this was really invented to help people quit smoking, and that's what we want to continue to do with it, fine. Let's take it to the pharmacy and do what we did with Sudafed. Let adults go in and have ID and get it from a pharmacy, right? But that's not going to take place. That's not going to happen. This isn't about vaping invented to help people quit smoking. It doesn't help people quit smoking. 70% of high school kids are vaping. 54% of middle school kids are vaping. They didn't start vaping to get off cigarettes. They started vaping. So I'm going to show you something. The two devices on the top, it's the same thing. It's called the IQOS. Anybody ever seen it? No one, huh? No one's seen it. So this was invented in 2007 by Philip Morris Tobacco Company. See, when you light a cigarette, you take that butane lighter and you light your cigarette, and it burns the paper and it burns the cigarette when you inhale it. Some of the butane gets inhaled too. The burnt paper and the burnt tobacco are carcinogens, and they go into the lungs, cause cancer, cause problems. So what that IQOS is you take your cigarette and you stick it inside of it, and it heats the cigarette instead of burning it. So there's no butane going into your lungs. There's no burnt paper going into your lungs. There's no burnt tobacco going into your lungs. There's still carcinogens and tobacco and nicotine going into your lungs. It's just less. It is, in fact, a safer method to smoke a cigarette. It's not safe, still gonna be the #1 killer in the world, still gonna cause death, right? But it's just a little safer. And if they had a device that made cigarette smoking safer 12 years ago, why didn't they put it out on the market? This got FDA approval 2 months ago. 2 months ago. Well, the reason they didn't put it out on the market is because when I showed you that hearing in 1994, 54% of adult Americans smoked cigarettes. In 1994, 54% of adult Americans. When this was invented 12 years ago, 21% of adult Americans smoked cigarettes. They literally decided there wasn't a big enough market share to put the IQOS out to be successful. So they said, we have to build the cigarette market again. And they learned how to do it one time, let's do it again. Now, that hearing, 1994, turned into the largest tobacco settlement in American history. Almost $700 billion was fined by the tobacco industry in 1995. In 1995, the tobacco industry was getting ready to flavor cigarettes. I don't know if you remember, we were gonna have mint Marlboro. We're gonna have lemon Camels. We were gonna have mango Newports. I mean, they were gonna flavor cigarettes. And the federal government said no. 1995. Well, 2007, the tobacco industry says, well, we'll flavor the electronic cigarette. And the FDA was blind. Congress never regulated it. They allowed it to happen. And all of these pens started getting marketed to children. Now, most people believe that these devices were invented to help people quit smoking. And in fairness to that theory, even the American Cancer Society says the exact same thing. But let me show you what the American Cancer Society's official statement is. Smokers who can or won't quit should be encouraged to switch to the least harmful form of tobacco product possible. If a smoker wants to switch to quit smoking, more power to them. It's not gonna happen. Most people who switch to a vape go back to cigarettes, or they do both. They vape and they smoke. So this is not gonna help people quit smoking, but I'm not talking about the adults. If an adult can quit, I have 2 friends that both quit smoking by going on a vape. Of course, they're still vaping. They haven't quit anything, right? Here's the problem. 7 million people die each year from cigarettes, 7 million. If some of those people can quit smoking by going on a vape, I'm all for it. Fine, do whatever you gotta do. But I'm talking about kids. And when they start youth initiation, they increase the likelihood they're gonna end up on cigarettes. If kids begin as adolescents smoking, vaping, they will become a smoker 6 times more likely to become a smoker. And the reason that they flavored strawberry, lemon, and apple, and orange, and banana, and all this stuff was because they wanted to target and to market kids. And they went to the internet on all these kids' platforms, and they've been advertising vaping to children since 2009. 2009. The platforms really went crazy in 2011. This is 8 years in the making. And they just approved the IQOS 2 months ago. They just started talking about banning flavored pods a year ago. They say 32% of high school kids are vaping. When I ask kids that question, I say, is it higher or lower? They don't say lower. They say higher. The whole audience says higher. The CDC, federal government, says 13% of middle school kids are vaping. I said to the kids, is it higher or lower? They all in unison say higher. They know. They're telling us this, right? So, tobacco use has been on the decline for 2 decades. It's been plummeting. But if you count e-cigarettes and vaping, nicotine ingestion is at a historical high. We've never ingested more nicotine than we are in this country right now. The American Lung Association has been tracking high school smokers. Look at that red line going down. In 2011, Juul was on the market in 2009, but they mass marketed it in 2011. Between 11 and 13, Altria spent $1 billion marketing the Juul, the largest financial marketing expenditure in American history for a single product. And in 2013, that line went straight up. 2014, they stopped tracking this chart. This has become a huge problem. And in 2016, last year of the Obama administration, Congress gave the FDA the authority to regulate the industry. And the Obama administration said, we'll kick this to the Trump administration. Well, Trump comes in office and he appoints a man named Scott Gottlieb to run the FDA. And Scott Gottlieb gives the e-cigarette industry until August 2022 to regulate. They gave our kids 6 years to be hooked. Well, a lot of people sued. Health departments all over the country. A lot of people like myself filed friend of the court briefs, and they won. And July 12th of this year, a judge gave a 10-month deadline. The judge said, you've got to regulate this industry. So he overturned the FDA. Well, the FDA went around the back door and said, okay, you have 10 months to comply. But if you can't comply, we'll give you a 1-year extension. And if you can't meet it, we'll give you 1 more year, 1 extension. So now we're still back to 2021. Well, 2 weeks after that happened, a 26-year-old girl in Colorado Springs, Colorado, dies of acute respiratory distress syndrome from vaping. And her mom is mad. Her mom goes to Washington. She will not leave the senator's office until she's met with. Well, after he meets with her, he learns a colleague of his had a 23-year-old male in Illinois die from vaping. And all of a sudden, it hit the news. All of a sudden, they started talking about this. You've heard a lot about respiratory disorders and lung damage, but what you haven't heard about is what's coming. When you talk about stroke, you don't really talk about stroke for 20-year-old kids. Heart attacks in their 30s, cardiovascular disease in your 20s, okay, hindered brain development, circulatory system disorders. When you start hearing about this for children, it's going to really, really, really be bad. Now, right here is how everyone in America died in the year 2017. That's how everyone died. Heart disease is number 1, cancer is number 2, and respiratory disorders is number 3. Respiratory disorders is what's going to be the biggest damage initially that we're going to see with vaping. This will go years and years and years. We will see the damage from this 15 to 20 years from now, but it's going to be in other areas of the body. What you will see over the next 10 years is respiratory disease. This right here is respiratory disorders. It's called COPD. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, it's called acute respiratory distress syndrome. That's Mark. He was 31 years old when he died 11 months ago, 31 years of age, and he vaped for 14 months. The doctor wrote on his chart under his name, I blacked it out, it says, subject has the lungs of someone who's been smoking cigarettes for 50 years. The kid vaped for 14 months. Now, right now in the news, the federal government is saying that it's the black market THC. That's what they're saying. It's not. This kid never vaped anything except one brand of one juice from an organic juice company. His flavor was blueberry. It's all he ever vaped. His family has every credit card statement for everything he ordered. They're suing this company who put up on their website that their stuff doesn't cause popcorn lung, their stuff doesn't cause this, but their stuff caused this. I was in the hospice room 3 days before he died with his 3 little daughters and his wife. When he died at the age of 31 and tearing up in his eyes, he looked at me, he said, "You were right." Yeah, I know, but I wish you listened to me, right? So, Juul announced a month ago, Juul, J-U-L, that's the big company, it's 80% of the market. They announced that they shipped out 1 million contaminated mint pods. They didn't. They shipped out 10 million contaminated pods of every flavor. You will hear that in the next 60 days. They were made in Wisconsin. A chemical got into the wax manufacturing process, and they sent out over 10 million contaminated pods. This happened a month ago. In Australia, they stopped the shipment of Sriracha hot sauce bottles destined for California from China. But it wasn't Sriracha hot sauce in the bottles. It was $210 million worth of liquid crystal meth, methamphetamine, being shipped to California. And so some people started asking, wow, they're putting it in liquid form for smuggling purposes. No, they're putting it in liquid form for vaping purposes. This is going in vapes. I have 36 different articles over the last 90 days, but here's one. This is a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old kid who were rushed to the hospital in Morgantown, West Virginia, 12 and 14, and in their vape, heroin and meth. I have 36 articles in the last 90 days. It's going to get worse. This is going to get far, far worse because people who want to ingest drugs, they'll tell you, I'll tell you, the best ingestion method is inhalation like that. So as soon as that happened, August, this is dated August 17th, New Jersey announced that they had 9 cases of lung damage. Now they have 1,600. New York announced that they had 11. Now they have 2,500. And the federal government says, ooh, we have 100 possible cases. Now they're investigating over 8,000. Over 8,000. The first week they came out with their numbers, they said it was THC because 3 out of 4 people had vaped THC. But I asked the CDC, yeah, but what about the 16% said they only did nicotine? They told me those were outliers. So they announced to the American public that it was the THC. Well, 12 days later, that 76.9% dropped to 70%, and my outliers of 16% jumped to 26. More people are announcing that they didn't vape THC. Why is the federal government saying it's THC? They don't want to, listen, they don't want to hurt the tobacco industry. This is really going to get bad. And so now you know what it's called. This is the word for it, EVALI, electronic cigarette vaping associated lung injury. The federal government came up with a name for it, They don't know what causes it. They don't know how to cure it. They don't know what the morbidity or the mortality rate is, but at least we have a name for it, EVALI. So, this is pretty interesting. My friend comes over to my house, and he throws those 3 bottles on my sofa. His 17-year-old son is standing right next to him. And I said, where did you get that? And he said, Jason got it in the mail today, UPS. I said, what? Are you kidding me? Are you going to ground him for the rest of his life? He said, you know his 2 older brothers smoke, Michael. I'm trying to keep this kid off cigarettes, and vaping is safer. No, you're wrong. Vaping is not safer. I want you to look at those 3 bottles. I told him, look at the bottle on the left. It's called propylene glycol. Look at the bottle on the right. It's called vegetable glycerine. Those are food additives. Every person in this room, every person watching this, you've consumed both of those ingredients in the last 48 hours. If you eat processed foods in America, which I don't know anybody who doesn't, okay? A couple of Amish people I know in Pennsylvania, they grow everything, which I wish I was that disciplined. But if you eat processed foods and you eat fast food in America, you've consumed both of those ingredients in the last 48 hours. It's in 80% of our processed foods in America. I said, look at the tops of the bottles, Jay. They have squirt tops on it. That's because they want the customer to squirt the liquid juice into the canister to make their own e-juice. But look at the bottle in the middle. There's no score top on that bottle. That's because that's 48 milliliters of poison. That's liquid nicotine. You couldn't even buy that in America 5 years ago. Well, 7 years ago. Now they're putting it in 48 milliliter bottles and selling it to children on the internet, right? That's 48 milliliters of liquid nicotine. If I put 3 tablespoons of that in your oatmeal, you're going to the hospital, right? It's a poison. There's no score top on the bottle because in these kits, they give these kids either syringes or eye droplets because you're supposed to put maybe 5 droplets of liquid nicotine into a juice to vape. I turned to the kid, I said, did they give you eye droplets or syringes? He goes, here, Mike, I'll show it to you. I'll pull it up on your laptop. I said, wait a minute. You can't get this unless you're 21. New Jersey just passed a law when this happened. You can't get this unless you're 21. You're 17. How'd you even order it? Well, he shows me the website that he ordered it from. Enter your birthday to verify that you're 21 years of age or older. And I said, whose birthday did you use? And he points to his father. He said, I used my dad's. Oh, creative kids you got here, Jay. Here's another one. Are you of legal smoking age? Check yes or check no. The no is hard to see. It's a black box. But if the kid wants to go in and order, he pushes that yes button. That's how we're protecting kids. This is the Juul website until about 5 months ago. The blue box says, I am plus 21 and I agree to be age verified. The gray box says, I am not plus 21. If the kid's trying to order online, how do you think he's gonna figure it out? It's not that tricky. So here's the kit that the boy ordered. He had syringes, okay, and canisters and reservoir and a stopper and a mixer and 10 flavors and chemicals. And I said, Jason, what are the rubber gloves for? He said, Mike, you don't want to get liquid nicotine on your hands. It's dangerous. I said, excuse me, you're vaping it? He said, yeah, but liquid nicotine is safe on the inside of your body. It's just not safe on the outside of your body. I said, excuse me, did they teach biology at your high school? He goes, man, I took biology last year. I said, do you remember what grade you got? He goes, yeah, I got a D. And I said, oh my God, shocking. Dad, how did this little scientist get a D in biology? It just doesn't make any sense to me, right? Safe on the inside, boys, right? Safe on the inside, just not safe on the outside. You gotta be kidding me. So these Sorens are real popular on the West Coast. They're very thin. They look almost like a mirror compact. And it came with nicotine or non-nicotine inserts. Now it comes with THC. There's over 20 companies making THC for that device. I took every pen on that screen and I was hacking it to work with the DEA to prove to them that I could put any drug on earth in a vape pen. And I proved it. We had all sorts of prescription drugs. I brought it down to a liquid and to a wax, and we manufactured it. I could put any drug in a vape. Well, this is the Juul. And it doesn't come with anything other than nicotine salts flavored pods, okay? But they have another company called PAX, P-A-X, that manufactures the exact same device with the exact same pods for marijuana, right? Well, the reason I tell people that the pods, see, these are pods right here. This is fruit medley, this is tobacco flavored, that's mint, that's creme brulee, and they're nicotine salts, so it's not nicotine, it's nicotine salts. Nicotine is modified into a freebase nicotine. Okay, Juuls doesn't use that. Juuls use raw nicotine. The reason nicotine salts was never used by the tobacco industry is because the cigarette doesn't get hot enough to deliver it to the brain. But the electronic cigarette does. It goes to 200 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, so the nicotine salts go right to the brain. And nicotine salts is 3 to 4 times more potent than nicotine is. So now we're delivering not nicotine. You know, I don't know if you can see that. Well, you can't see it. But anyway, on the Juul cases, it says 3% nicotine, 5% nicotine, 6% nicotine. That's absolutely untrue. Multiply it by 3 or 4 because it's not nicotine, it's nicotine salts. And nicotine salts cross the blood-brain barrier. Nicotine doesn't even do that. So these kids are having learning problems, memory problems, concentration problems. I'm gonna do 708 schools this year. I'm probably gonna end up at about 250 parent nights. Probably 250, maybe 200 for sure, but 250. I can't tell you how many parent nights are like this with Not even 10 people sitting in the room. In Louisiana, in Mississippi, in Michigan, in California, New Jersey, and Maine, doesn't matter where I go. We're gonna be sitting here in 3 to 5 years, really, really, really regretting allowing this to happen and not doing more about it. So, there's a chemical I want to tell you about called benzoic acid. It's in every Juul pod. It's in every nicotine salt pod, because now there's over 60 brands that Altria owns. Well, Altria doesn't own the brands. Altria owns the nicotine salt brand, because they manufacture the salt and they give it to other companies who make these flavored pods. I'll show you those pictures in just 1 second. But there's a chemical in all these, including every THC, every marijuana vaping device there is on the market today. It's called benzoic acid. The only way THC and nicotine gets to the brain is if benzoic acid will get it there. Most devices are low, between 0.2 and 2 milligrams a milliliter. The Juul is 44.8 milligrams a milliliter. Why? You need that much benzoic acid to push this salt to the brain. But when benzoic acid goes into the body at 200 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, it turns into a chemical compound 18 letters long. I don't even try to pronounce it. But the part of the body that it affects the most is the reproductive system, male and female, male especially. And so a lot of these boys are going to be in their 20s and in their 30s trying to start that family. And it's not working out. And him and the girl are going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to give the boy a test. And the test is going to reveal they're unable to have children. We're going to experience an infertility crisis that we've never, ever experienced in our country's history. And I'm telling these kids right now, you're not going to see the damage from this for 15 years, but you'll see it. I don't know if you watch a lot of late night TV. Sometimes I don't get to hotels till midnight, and I'm doing paperwork and catching up on emails, and I have the TV on, right? And so about a month ago, I had the TV on in a hotel, and this guy comes up on the screen and he goes, "Are you or a loved one diagnosed with mesothelioma? You worked in the concrete business with asbestos, and if you or a loved one died from mesothelioma, call this number, because you might be entitled to financial compensation." And I'm just looking, I'm like, shh. I swear the very next commercial is another lawyer, and he's talking about mesh implants. And if you or a loved one had a hernia operation and your doctor used mesh implants and you had medical complications, call this number. You might be entitled to financial compensation. And the very next commercial, I couldn't believe it. This lawyer comes on the screen, he's talking about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and if you or a loved one used Roundup in your garden, and you got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and your loved one died, oh well, but just call this number. You might be entitled to financial compensation. I swear to you, the very next commercial, 4 in a row, Just for Men hair color, had an ingredient that they knew caused cancer, but yet they pushed it out there anyway, made billions of dollars. Now they're being sued because many men got cancer from Just for Men hair color. I woke up the next morning, I went right to bed after that last commercial, I couldn't take anymore. Woke up the next morning, and I was watching Fox and Friends, and the doctor on Fox and Friends is coming on, and he's explaining about Zantac, and how Zantac caused cancer. And that week, CVS and Walgreens pulled all the Zantac worldwide off their shelves. You can't buy Zantac anymore. You know why? Ritonamide, it's called, it's a cancer ingredient, it's been in Zantac. They've been selling this thing for years. And now, I'm getting ready for that commercial. If you took Zantac for acid reflux and you got cancer, call this number and you might be entitled to financial compensation. We've put all these products out there that have absolutely caused health consequences. And I asked the kids, and they're still vaping. They think it's funny. They think it's hilarious. It won't be hilarious much longer. So, this is a Juul right there, a J-U-L. That pod that's next to it, that's not a Juul pod, that's a Cushy pod. This company ships out of Alaska, Washington, Nevada, and Colorado. This is called Blue Dream, that's called Monster Cookies, that's called Purple Punch. What that is, it's flavored marijuana pods, and they're manufactured to go right in the top of a Juul, J-U-U-L. So now kids, if they can't get their mango Juul, they can get their mango Cushy marijuana pod. But now instead of vaping their nicotine, they're vaping THC. This is a Hulee, H-U-L-E-E. This box looks almost identical to a PAX box that's owned by Juul. So Juul owns another device that's just like this called the PAX, but this is the Hooli. They give you the charging cord. That pod up there is pineapple marijuana. That's a stizzy. Those are disposable. Those are all marijuana devices. So here's what's real scary, and I want you to know this, and I know there's kids here, but you're sitting with your kids, so you're gonna have a conversation about this. Because if the kids can't get the Juul flavors anymore, here's a website, one of 30 that I have, right? How to put weed in a Juul pod. So they can take a Juul pod and they can repurpose it and they can put whatever they want in it. If they can't get their flavor that they like, they can make their flavor into the device. So they even give you a step-by-step video, but this is the screenshots from the video. Take your Juul pod. Step 2, flathead screwdriver in between the body and the cap. Step 3, put the screwdriver between the pod, body, and the rubber to remove it. Step 4, fill your pod. And on the side, they had 10 different videos that you could go watch to make pretty much any kind of vaping device flavor that you want. And step 5, reinsert the rubber plug, attach the cap, and you're finished. You're now ready to use your Juul as you normally would, only now you'll be vaping your solution of weed e-juice. Isn't that nice? We're gonna tell kids how to make weed e-juice and show them videos. This is CBD, cannabidiol CBD Juul pods. They're called Skittles, 1,000 milligrams of cannabidiol, CBD. Okay. I walk into a store in Vermont because it's 1 mile over the New York border, and Governor Cuomo banned flavored pods in New York. And I was at the school in upstate New York the day he did it. And I asked the 8th graders, well, how are kids gonna get their flavored pods now? It's banned in New York. And they all told me the same thing. Drive 1 mile that way, it's Vermont. You can get anything you want. There's a store down there, they don't ID. 8th graders are telling me this. So I went to the store. This was the shelves to the right of the cash register. This was the shelves to the left of the cash register. And this was the cash register with all the products behind it. Now those jars up there are all flavors. They're just flavors. So now you take liquid nicotine and you mix it with your flavor and you put it into your device and you can have all the flavor that you want. But here's Miley's Tropical Mango. So this thing right here, it says Salt Nic brand. That's owned by Altria. That's nicotine salts. And nearly every single device in this whole store was nicotine salts. Those are Lush pods, those are Calis, those are Zula CBDs, those are CBDs, but those are all nicotine salts. Those are Cs, they're all nicotine salts. Those are Lush pods, those are CS pods, those are all lemon, green apple, grape, strawberry, blueberry, all the pods that you could possibly want. This right here is a dank tank. That's a marijuana pen. So now it's 100% pure top shelf THC liquid. So the kid can buy this. There's 16 chemicals in it. If an adult wants to use this, I think it's ridiculous. But if a kid uses this, that's a problem. And so now this is the next phase that we're moving into. Those are asthma inhalers, but they're not asthma inhalers. They're THC inhalers, THC mist inhalers. So when I show this to security guards all across the country, security officers and SROs and everything, they're like, oh my God, I had no idea. Yeah, don't you think this should be on the nightly news? Like, don't you think that the CNN or Fox or MSNBC should be covering this? I mean, I know they're too busy covering the important stuff in Washington. Yeah, right. Don't you think that this should be covering this? Now watch this. So these are vape hoodies. These two tubes right here, you attach your vape device to this tube, and it goes up over the hoodie, and you can suck it in on the other side. So this is a vape hoodie, vaporware on the internet. You can buy these hoodies, right? And some of them are very discreet. They don't say vapor on the hoodie. You don't want to be inconspicuous, right? But now there's hoodies that have tubes in the sleeves, so the kid can vape in the classroom, and they could vape it, and then they could blow the vape into the tube on the hoodie. Or they could just put it underneath their hoodie. They can just put it in there, and it'll dissipate, because a lot of these devices don't put out that big flume. See that kid smoke? He's not vaping a Juul, okay? That's a bigger vape device. but you are not going to have that big flume with smaller pens and smaller dabs and vapes. So cannabis-induced psychosis, CIP, when these kids are vaping these high concentrates of THC, it's inducing psychosis. And it's up 1,500% in 10 years, right? It really is up 1,500% in 6 years, okay, since 2013. But the statistics go all the way back to 1999. Cannabis hypermesis syndrome, where the gastrointestinal system loses control and there's uncontrolled vomiting for days and weeks on end, is up 2,500% all across the country for children that they can't control their vomiting. So I wanted to find out how they were making the pods and the stuff for the marijuana. So I went to a plant in Denver. This is a 3-foot-long Pyrex tube full of marijuana. And on this side, they stack them in these machines from floor to ceiling, and they have these brackets that hook up to this big wall that comes in. And then they blast butane and propane through this side, and what comes out the other side is that. So that's marijuana. I know it doesn't look like marijuana to you, but it's defined as marijuana. That's 84%, 87%, 97% pure THC concentrate, and they define it as marijuana. Earwax, shatter, butter, hash oil capsules, they have lots of names for it, but that's all marijuana. This right here is 100% THCA crystalline, crystal marijuana smoked on a pipe. The Michigan definition of marijuana is any extract, resin, or derivative of the cannabis plant. So that's marijuana. So when you legalize marijuana and you're for legalization of marijuana, that's marijuana. And I don't know anybody who's really for that. I guess some adults are doing it and want to do it and they think it's a good thing. I'm worried about kids. So when I saw those vape vials, I had no idea where we were going to go. I really, really didn't, especially not this quick. So the cognitive function of the kid's brain. A lot of people are saying marijuana will help us with our opioid crisis. Every heroin addict I ever met, marijuana was their first illicit drug that they did. It's not going to help our opioid crisis. Okay, so vaping and addiction. I asked the kids today, 6th and 7th graders, and then I asked the 8th graders. Raise your hand if you know a middle school or high school kid who's vaping or juuling. They call it juuling, okay? And you really believe that they're addicted to it. And you should have seen the hands go up. 80, 90% of the kids in this room, both groups today, said that they know a kid who's addicted to nicotine. So let's say they're right. Let's say 10% of them are right. Let's just really be conservative. Let's say 10% of them are right. You got kids that are addicted to nicotine. And I wanted to know what I was going to tell parents, so I really started researching this. And I went to the Walmart and I got Nicoderm and Nicorette, the gums, the lozenges, and the patches. And I started looking at them. And I turned the boxes around, and on the back of the box it says, if you're under 18 years of age, consult a doctor before use, because no studies have been found to show if this product will work for you. So I bought 3, lozenges, patches, and gums. And you know that legal paperwork that's inside that we never look at, right? We never read the stuff. Well, it says that no studies have ever been done to see its safety, to see if it's safe for use under the age of 18. So if the kid's 17 years and younger, are you going to use a product that's never been tested on a 17-year-old or younger person in the history, right? So I go on CBS Morning News, January of this past year, and I was very excited because a national news story was going to be done on vaping. It was about 2 minutes and 10 seconds long. And the commissioner for the New York state said vaping is basically threatening 5 decades of public health gains. And that host right there goes, okay, and we'll be right back after this commercial break. And I said to her, did you hear what he said? She goes, sir, Commissioner, could you repeat that? She goes, I heard what he said. He said 50 years of public health gains is getting thrown out the window because of vaping, and you went to commercial break. She said, yeah, we're on a very tight schedule. And it really dawned on me, America doesn't have a clue. America doesn't have a clue. I mean, there's 3 sets of people here tonight. America doesn't have a clue. So let me leave you with this. Sorry to be like the bearer of bad news, right? 15 to 24, 15 years of age to 24, this demographic, the #1 cause of death is accidents. The federal government says 1/3 of all teens who die 15 to 24 die in a car. That's untrue. 1/3 of 15 to 24-year-old kids who die are behind the wheel of a car. 2/3 are in a car. We just don't count the kid in the passenger seat in the back seat. And 90% of every one of those accidents, the driver was impaired under the influence of drugs or alcohol. 90%. So suicide's number 2. I've never seen a youth suicide that wasn't drug and alcohol related. Homicide's number 3. I've never been involved in a homicide juvenile, ever researched it or ever looked at it that wasn't drug related. And the number 4 cause of death is a drug overdose or alcohol poisoning. So when people say, Michael, drugs is the number 4 cause of death for teenagers 15 to 24, I say, no. It's 1, it's 2, it's 3, and it's 4. And cancer is number 5. Watch this. In 2000, respiratory disorders, you know that one I told you was the number 3 cause of death in America? It was number 16. And in 10 years, it jumped to number 10. Now it's number 6. 15 to 24, and the 6th leading cause of death is respiratory disease. 15 to 24, and we don't think it has anything to do with vaping? Listen, it does. So on my website, there's a link to Marijuana X, or it's on YouTube. There's a link to drakes.com. He's got a whole thing on juuling. There's a report on marijuana. You should really look at it to find out the long-term consequences so far from the law enforcement perspective. You should look at pharmaceuticals. I have tons of stuff on pharmaceuticals and what's getting ready to take place in our country. And all this information is on our website. All this stuff that's changing with everything, methamphetamine and cocaine. And about 3 months ago, a lot of people were on social media announcing, oh, we've turned the tide. We had a 5% reduction in overdose death in America. It was completely untrue. We had a 5% reduction in opioid overdose deaths. Heroin was up, methamphetamine was up, overdose was up. It wasn't 5% reduction in overdose, it was 5% reduction in opioid overdose. But let's say I'm wrong and they're right. Okay, you had a 5% reduction in overdose death. That's 5%. Look, that's 5%. Are we happy with that? The first time in 8 years we've had a dip, and that's it. So, I'm on social media. Every single day I put up more and more information for people to let you read what's going on. That's my page, Michael Reagan De Leon, and I have a public figure page, Michael De Leon. Please follow them. You will get constant information. If you're interested, you can just scroll by it if you're not, but I want you to be informed. I want you to continue to be informed. And that's our website. So you go to our website and you find all this information. I have my card, please come get it, but if you're interested in drug tests, I have them, or you can order them on our website. And this right here, I don't know if anybody knows Bart Simpson. Anybody watches The Simpsons? Well, Bart Simpson, the real Bart Simpson, she is a good friend of mine. Did you know Bart Simpson was a 67-year-old grandmother? That's the voice of Bart Simpson, Nancy Cartwright. She's the biggest voiceover artist in Hollywood. And so she put this together called Know More About Drugs. She's not saying yes to drugs or no to drugs. She's not advocating yes or, she just wants you to be informed. If you're on drugs, if your kids are on drugs, you should know everything there is to know about that drug in layman's terms, not in that complicated stuff they give us. So this is all about med guides. Take as many of these as you want. Give them to everyone that you can. They just have to be more informed to know more about drugs. Table Talks, our website, my card, our movies. If I can assist you in any way, you just let me know. I just wanted to give you the information and send you home with resources so you could download the Table Talks, you could download the Success for Teens, you can download all sorts of stuff on our website and learn more. So thank you so much for letting me share. Thank you very much.
For those people who are here tonight, I just want to thank you for coming. Also for the people who are out there watching our live stream, or will be watching this later on, we just want to thank again Michael De Leon for coming to our school district this evening. We also want to make sure that we're starting at least an awareness of this problem and epidemic that's occurring, and it starts with a ripple effect. Okay, it may start off really small, but once people start to become more aware of the problem, they're going to be able to be more informed and be able to make better decisions. And this is definitely something that's being targeted towards our youth here in our community and also around the United States. But thank you again, and have a good evening and drive home.